And Team Secret, the ever-important giant killers, they wake up from their slumber and they open their eyes and they look at the standings and they say, who is the giant of VCT Pacific right now? And they go, oh my gosh, it's RRQ. Welcome, YouTube. It's Chobra, and we are getting ready for our last week of VCT Pacific Stage 1. The regulation phase, the group stage. We just have one match left for each team, and a lot of these still matter. And some of them, quite frankly, matter the most because it's kind of when you move in, lose, you're out. So these are going to be some banger ways to wrap up stage 1 before we get ready for the top 8 going into the playoffs. But before we jump into that, let's do a quick review of what happened in week 4. Let's update where we think each team's strengths are, right, where their power ratings are going into the very last week, and then we will jump into our Pickems. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So we will begin with Nongshim Red Force versus Team Secret. I mean, listen, there's not much to say here. Thankfully, it was a 2-0. I would have been very concerned if it was a 2-1. It's Pearl and Split, two maps that I think do favor Nongshim a little bit. So kind of interesting that this was allowed. The Haven ban, kind of interesting coming out from Secret here. But Icebox being banned out from Nongshim, not too surprising there. But Pearl and Split, these are maps that I think Nongshim has generally favored all stage 1, even when they were playing, even as they're switching comps. Dombi continues to be back on the Neon. That's always great. And the Split was just an absolute slapping against Team Secret. Yeah, I mean, does this mean that Nongshim's entirely back? I think they're on track. They're on track to kind of now figure out, okay, our old form, how does that work in the current meta, and then how do we apply that to each map in the map pool? So I think that it's a work in progress, but overall, Team Secret, I think most would agree that they currently look like the weakest team, or at least one of the weakest teams in Pacific, so it's a good thing that Nongshim didn't really falter here. On the side of Team Secret, there's not much to say. They still haven't changed. They're still not great. They're still not interesting. That's the end of the story. And then that day also had another banger of DRX versus Boom Esports, which, I thought was going to be a close game for sure. I did predict Boom, but it was kind of hard to imagine what would come of this. So very, very interesting. Now, obviously, if you watched the matches and you've been following along, you do know that Freeing was playing the Yoru all of a sudden, and we found out afterwards that it was kind of a last-minute change requested by Flashback to take a leave of absence, personal leave of absence. In some ways, if you're a DRX fan, I think you can just be like, you know what? Listen, the players did well with what they had. Obviously, I think there were several times, especially Freeing not looking that comfortable on the Yoru, certain rounds that you just shouldn't have really let go back into Boom's hands. Yes, that happens, but if you consider the circumstances, it's if you're a DRX fan, this is one where you're just you know what? I'm not saying we would have won no matter what, but it's I can forget about this match if you're a DRX fan. But if you're a Boom fan, it's it doesn't matter to the circumstances. You were able to close it out because DRX was one of those teams where a lot of us thought, I don't know, they're probably still top 2 no matter what. They look strong. They look like they'll be able to battle through it. The fact that NC Slasher continues to be one of the top fraggers, I think, is very, very impressive. Famous goes crazy in this one, dropping 60. Berserk's once again rising up to the occasion. Boom just looks better and better and better. Going into playoffs, you're going to just have more and more data, right? So I think they're going to look better and better for the most part. We'll talk about some other circumstances where that may not happen. T1 versus RRQ. Oh boy. Indonesia was feasting this past weekend as RRQ finally closed it out against a very, very strong team in a match that mostly mattered. Unfortunately, we're still not sure if they can really pull it off in a match that really matters, like an elimination match. We don't know about that yet. But overall, the RRQ continues to look better and better. I think this is a case of that first loss to Nongshim in regulation did a lot of good for RRQ. I think they went back to the drawing board and said, okay, now we know we still have work to do on A, B, and C. And since then, they've been looking better and better. There's still, overall, are there rounds where you would still like them to go a bit faster? Sure. But I think they're working on that. We can see the improvement week by week. And then also they are more and more thorough, especially as they get closer to winning, which is, I think, oftentimes where they would fall. For T1, I don't know if it's too concerning. Like, even in the post-match conference, I mean, Buzz obviously looked very upset, but he said, sometimes these are the losses you need to really learn what you have to improve on. Obviously, Buzz was just not having a day. He was, as you can tell, he was not having a day. It was a rough day for Buzz, but I do think this was you had it coming. It had to happen at some point, especially because they weren't really innovating since Bangkok. They were just working with what they knew. They needed the wake-up call. I think they were fine with just kind of seeing, hey, how far do we go? We are probably making it into playoffs, so no need. Unless they got crushed like the first 2 weeks, I don't think they would have done anything differently anyway. But the question is now is like, okay, well, unless you do change, now other teams are going to beat you. So you can't rely on just fundies to make it through. The big question remains on whether they will change things up for the last week or not. Just shortly, to keep it short, I don't think they will, right? You're already into playoffs. You should be fine. So for RRQ, I mean, dude, Jemkin was part of 29 first duels, and he wins out 19 of them. Really, really impressive. I'm so glad that a lot of people worldwide are now like, yo, Jemkin is like the guy, because he always has been. It's just kind of, went quiet because the team overall never really made a big run. But that's great news for them. My eyes are going to be on Munyet for this team, quite frankly. I think he's the last one in line to have to kind of make a big consistent level up of like not overheating, being self-sufficient when he's lurking and things like that. So that is the point to watch out for. Gen G versus GE. Yeah, there's not too much to say on this one. GE did bring back Darion into the match. Now, Patrick, who was, chilling with the team, so I don't think there's reason to read into that too much, but it didn't look great. There were rumblings of Kellius not calling this, which would imply that I would assume Crystal might have been calling this game, but it doesn't even quite matter because you just got outplayed. Like, Gen G was just better. They were better as a team. They were better as individuals. Ash is feeling comfy. Foxy9 continues to play well. I'm not a big fan of how he played this Killjoy. Like, the Killjoy against the ISO can be okay, but it's also like it was a Jet ISO, and also he's like constantly just pushing up to the smoke to be good for one. Like, we know this by now. Like, we've seen the pattern, so I think other teams will exploit that. So I don't think this is like confidence boosting for Gen G. It's just like, okay, well, at least they're not regressing. Like, they are continuing to look better. That's good. But I think this was a case of Gen G knew they were going to win. So we'll have to wait and see. And the last week matchup against DRX will be very telling for where Gen G is. As for GE, it does seem like there are things that it's going to be hard for us to identify from the outside on why isn't it clicking, right? Because this is a classic case. I said this in my China video of it's kind of like FPX. Week 1, it looks amazing. The fundamentals are good. I can see the comms on the minimap. They're working together as a team. Everything's so clean. The timings are so perfect. And you're like, okay, well, sure, it was against a weaker opponent in week 1, but you play like this, like you're still going to be a contender against the top teams. And then they just like haven't repeated that at all in the other weeks. So it does make you wonder what's going on there. Oh, is that going through? Well, if it is, great. That's a reminder for everyone watching right now to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment if you're enjoying the videos. And make sure that if you would like more content that you join the membership on YouTube. But thank you so much, the one and only Kitty, for the tier 1 resub. Appreciate it. Moving right on along, the last day of week 4, Talon versus Zeta Division. Now, we don't want to talk about this one too much from the Talon side, as most of you know. Cruz's father has passed away, so they weren't able to scrim. So obviously condolences to Cruz and his family. But also I saw some people mention that Frost had mentioned before that he was planning on getting some other people IGLing experience in certain matches. So, I don't think there's reason to read into this too much. They still couldn't scrim together, so it is what it is. As far as we know, Jip Boys was IGLing this match. But quite frankly, it didn't really matter. We didn't really get a chance to see the IGLing because Zeta just played like at an insane speed and tempo. 1010, first of all, joined because Depp has a shoulder injury, so he's back in Japan recovering. 1010 comes in from T1 Academy. For those who don't know, 1010 is Meteor's younger brother. And yes, obviously he had not such a great rep Back in the day, he did make a poor life decisions. He got dropped by his old team, had some disciplinary action against him, but now he's back. He's been on T1 Academy, and he looked amazing. But not just that, the rest of the team looked amazing. They were so fast on their decisions. Like, it's like, oh, we got on Lotus, there would be several of these rounds where they're like, all right, we got contact A, like immediately Mound, we were already pushed out, and then we're ready for the pinch. Like, this was Zeta being like, we're always gonna choose when to fight. We choose when we fight, which we've never seen from them in the past 3 years. So it was almost mind-boggling how this could change, because I kept saying that they've been improving, which is true, but this was like okay, they know what they need to do. Okay, they understand what their flaws are. Oh, they're making improvements. That's good. And then suddenly this week it was like, oh, they just like did it. They completed everything. And then Sugar Hero goes insane on Split. You just do not want to ever hit B site on Split, I guess, if you're playing against Zeta Division. And everybody was fragging. Like, Shota had some great rounds over on Lotus. Sugar Zero, of course, throughout. XTL on both fronts, I think, was doing very well. Clue's still holding his own as he's IGLing. So Zeta looks much improved. And if they can play like that every week moving forward or better, like, Zeta is going to be a very fun team to follow once again here in 2025. Last but not least, the big game, DFM versus Paper X. It was a fun Pearl. It was an okay Ascent. Honestly, I think Pearl was fun. Ascent, in hindsight, I don't know if it was really fun. It had exciting moments, but I would not say that it was fun. Pearl was fun if you weren't a fan of either team. Pearl was entertaining. Shout out to Akame for doing everything possible to stay in the game, man. 32 kills, 32-19, doing everything he possibly can. It wasn't great. DFM just disappeared on Lotus. Even though these were close games and DFM did win Ascent, none of it really seemed like it was truly on DFM's terms. It really just felt like they were just lashing out at each other. And at the end of the day, Paper X, that is kind of where they thrive, I guess. They went back to Jet Phoenix, so it does look like Paper X is going into comfort territory. A lot of people were talking about the draft, about why in the world would you ban Fracture? Why would you go to Pearl? Why are they doing this? And if I had to wager, I think it's because they've now dropped the Forsaken Duelist and they're back to something being primary duelist. And if something's going to be primary duelist, I don't think they want to be playing the Jet on Fracture. I think that has to be why. They don't want to switch to Forsaken just for that one map. They want to try to continue labbing out how they would work on Fracture, so they banned that out and they can play comfort roles on Pearl. Everyone's going to be looking at art, and yes, like -32 is really bad. -11 in first kills for us is really bad. For the record, not that you should ever read into numbers too much, it is still a higher rating than Buzz had. So, I'm just trying to put that into perspective. So, its numbers aren't everything, but it's a terrible stat line, and Art's been having a rough time. Now, he is the IGL for this team. Of course, in 2025, that only goes so far. But I think it's been very clear if you watch his body language on stage that the IGLing and the aim, right? Everything it's a huge burden to him. Like, he knows he's struggling, and he's obviously very upset about it. So I feel for him because he's such a jovial guy if you look at him in any piece of content. And he looked like he was having so much fun when they were working well. So it is going to be a question of, can Art adjust? Can Art adjust to calling at tier 1? Can Art adjust to the current calling system, which I think some IGLs, wink wink, are struggling with. If you're kind of stuck in an older way of calling and understanding the game and processing the game, you are struggling. Things have changed. And Art will need to fix that, because otherwise, love the guy or hate the guy, like, he is a weak spot, right? That's just a fact. All right, so with that said, let's go into our power ratings and see what's really changed, if anything, in how we view these teams. Okay, so this is what we had for going into week 4. T1 DRX at the top. Boom continued to be rising up and up. Talon, so this one, for those who missed it, you should check out the last week's if you didn't watch it, and leave a comment on that video as well, I guess. But I put Talon above Genji RQ just because I thought the peak, the snowball factor was bigger on Talon, not because I thought they were more consistent. Genji, I put over RQ because it's like, until RQ can tell me that they really confidently beat Genji, it's just like something about these two. Genji just always comes out on top. Nongshim had a pretty big drop off, but mostly because everyone else has been improving a lot, whereas Nongshim's kind of, retooling. And then the rest is pretty self-explanatory. So how does this change? There are some teams we need to look at, aren't there? Zeta needs a little bit of a reconsideration. Nongshim might need a reconsideration in terms of relativity. These three probably need a bit of a reconsideration. Now, does this really change anything, though? Because I think for Boom, DRX, T1, at this point, I think it's just like, these are the top three, right? These are the top three teams of Pacific in this moment, like on this day. And you could order them however you want. I guess if you want, you could order them Boom over DRX, but also if you kept DRX over Boom, I don't think that's that egregious, right? It was one match, it was a 2-1. Yeah, like DRX, that doesn't mean like DRX is beating Boom every time. It's just, where do you see the current power rating? I do think for me, I will have to, currently, I would bring DRX lower. If I was going to say by the end of the year, I think I would still for now keep DRX higher just because they have a track record of proving that they will always bounce back. But on this given day, even to the end of stage 1, DRX is going to have to do a little bit more retooling and things like that. As for T1, T1's an interesting one because it does really depend on how much are they actually prepared to change things, right? Because I find it hard to believe that T1 doesn't have newer comps prepped. They probably just want to perfect it until they can. Now, we haven't seen that, so it's like, that could even get worse, right? They could look even worse after that. Man, yeah, I don't know. This gets all messy. In some world, I guess Boom, currently looking like they're going to go undefeated. How would we feel about this? I don't know. I think I don't know if I feel good about bringing T1 down just because of the one match. If anything, I think RQ gets bumped up, but I don't know if T1 gets brought down. Because again, this is power ratings, right? It's what I think the overall current potential that they can show in like the next week. There is going to be some potential involved, but it has to be realistic, right? So it's like, I believe in G's potential, but I don't think they're going to show up to suddenly be top 6, right? So, there has to be some argument there. But I think Boom over DRX for now, just because Boom is like a very stable progress, whereas DRX for the next week or two, probably a little bit more unstable. But honestly, like these three, I would say the gap between these teams is more or less non-existent, no matter which order you put it in. Like any of them could beat each other on just depending on the day. Now, RRQ, do they enter the fold is a good question. I think Genji, more or less, I'm okay with keeping. Man, but am I putting RQ over Genji? I do think they're better right now, but will they beat them? Will they, though? Will they? Like, if they made it in playoffs, is RQ beating Genji? Because, like, I haven't seen it when it matters. Listen, I used to be the guy that said they're always going to beat them. They're going to beat them this time when it matters. And they just still haven't. It's been a long time. I don't know if I buy it. Now, Zeta, how much stronger? I don't think anything changes for these teams. I hate to say it for DFM, but I think Secret's still above DFM. Yeah, mostly because if May was still like giga fragging, I think I would be like, oh, no, DFM. But like Akame's fragging, but I think I would still just put Envy above. I don't think this really matters here. GE, I think, is fine at 10th. GE's probably like somewhere between 9 all the way down to 11th place, but therefore they're fine at 10th. PaperX probably goes down. Listen, you're struggling to beat DFM, who we're pretty confidently putting in 12th. That's not good. I mean, the impact Zeta had makes me want to put them in top 6. But again, small sample size. You know what I mean? At this point, like, Talon could go anywhere from 4th down to 8th. Like, barring all the circumstances and everything. I just don't know about that. The real question is who do I feel comfortable out of these teams to put into the top 6? And at that point, okay, I'm just going to do this just so everyone sees that I've considered it. This is what seems most logical on paper. But I do not feel comfortable doing this just out of pattern. I do not feel comfortable doing this. And then Nongshim, you know, like Nongshim looks like I think Nongshim will enter the fray again by the end of the stage. But if you say Talon beat Nongshim, so therefore they have to be above, I mean, Nongshim beat RQ. And Nongshim and T1 are the only teams to have beaten Boom. So, like, Nongshim, chat, I just can't help it. The facts just keep saying that Nongshim is number 1. Like, there's just no argument here. I'm just saying, you guys are always like, well, but they beat this team, so how are they ranked lower? It's like, I mean, you're right. Nongshim beat RQ and Boom. You know, they just have to be number 1. There's just no argument. Nah, we gotta do it. But Talon, I mean, listen, Talon could be anywhere. Like, Talon could just be like, they could just be hanging out. Talon could just be hanging out across. They're like from 1st all the way down to like 9th. This is Talon, okay? This is Talon's power rating. Their ceiling is as high as can be, and then their floor is as low as can be. Yo, man, but I don't think like, I don't think Gen G is good enough to be a top 4, but I don't think RQ's beating Gen G, man. I just don't think. Oh, man. It is hard. But you know what? We'll lock this in. Nongshim's back on track. So the Nongshim part's always going to have a little bit of, you know, it's going to have a little bit of faith. You know, I mean, I believe. But otherwise, the big question I think everyone's going to have is T1 over Boom. Quite frankly, you know, would I blame you if anybody else put Boom over T1? No, I don't think I would argue against it. But I just think, like, overall power rating-wise, if they play 10 times out of 10, would T1, you know, lose more than 5 every time? I don't think so. I think it would be maybe 5-5. Maybe it would be 6-4 in my head in favor of T1 if they played 10 times out of 10. But, you know, 1-2 just means that if Boom preps, like, they can beat, you know, it's not like America's where G2 is just above everybody, right? Like, there's a difference here for Pacific. So, which is why it's much more interesting to watch Pacific. But anyway, I just think that when they want to, they can pull out their cards, and I think it'll still be good. Now, there's a chance it gets worse, but I think that's where it is. But in that same vein, I think Boom not only beats DRX, but also DRX, I think, is going to have to do a little bit more retooling. So at least for the next week or two, like foreseeable future, probably a bit shakier. Whereas I think Boom is very solid. You're going to playoffs. You have more VODs to review from. Now, it is a bracket format, but I don't think anyone other than T1 is going to make huge changes, which is what I wanted to talk about, by the way, because that's the other thing. I do think if Boom plays T1 in playoffs, I think that is the literal worst case scenario for Boom. Because I guarantee you T1 is not playing all the same comps in playoffs. There's just no shot. There's no shot that they do that. And if that is the case, that is where Boom will be super tested. Because the only time they had to kind of do that is first week with Gen G. But we already kind of saw from kickoff that Gen G's not going to change that much. And also, they just went through a roster change. Munchkin's calling hadn't changed. Solo's coaching style hadn't changed. So everyone kind of knew what to expect, and it lined up. They played exactly like that. But if T1 will change things, I at least like 1 or 2 maps, right, that they will end up playing in a best of 3. And I think this is the toughest matchup that Boom can have, not just because T1's a Masters Bangkok winner, but because you will have less data against a really, really thorough and drilled team. So I think this is actually the worst case scenario for Boom, is running into T1 in some weird way. Boom desperately wants T1 to be first in Group Omega, so they just don't run into each other, because Boom is obviously going to be first in Alpha. RRQ, right, they beat T1. Looks pretty good, and, you know, it's just going to be slow increments for RQ. But again, the gap's not big at all. Gen G is just there. Nongshim, we're going to give a little bit of punch back up, right? They're showing that they're back on track into things that they're good at. So hopefully they can now expand that. I think they're on the right track. Talon this is negligible. Talon could be anywhere on this ranking right now. Not just because of the circumstances, but overall. Zeta looks very promising. I think definitely over Paper X. Paper X doesn't look that promising. You're struggling against DFM. And then GETS DFM have a lot to work on. So that is going to be my power ratings going into week 5. Now, again, these are always done week by week, so it's a little bit of fun. Don't read into it too much, but that's just kind of where I'm seeing what they've shown the most right now and what I expect them to be able to improve upon or maybe regress on into the coming week. So with this in mind, let's jump into our Pickems. But before we go into our Pickems, there's something very important that we need to talk about. Limserb on Reddit has made a grand old chart for us, which I'm just going to believe is true because as far as I can tell, it is mostly correct. Now, this talks about the playoff chances for every team. Now, Group Alpha is pretty straightforward, right? Boom is locked in first seed. They're good to go. Darius and Gen G is just a matter of who's above the other. Now, this match still matters. They play against each other. This still matters because you get champ points. And depending on if you're second or third, you would be playing, the second and third of the other group. So it is still going to matter. And then I assume they would do the seeding thing where the second seed of each group against their opponents would have, their choice on the map or such. So that should be in the order of the draft, so that matters as well. So it does still matter, but they're locked in. And then it's really just between Paper X and GE. And whoever wins moves on. These are probably just odds, but, like who's favored. But whoever wins moves on. Pretty straightforward. And DFM is out. Meanwhile, in Group Omega, anything could happen, including, might I point your eyes, to a 0.07 odds of Nongshim Red Force going through in first place. I don't know about you, but I like those odds. You're telling me there's a chance? I think that can happen. And you're wondering, how in the world can that happen? RRQ looks like they should be set to go. They just beat T1. How could that happen? Well, good old Limserb has given us a nice little chart here. So how does that happen? Well, if you're Nongshim Red Force, if you lose, you're out. That's pretty straightforward. If you win, you're in playoffs. If you lose, you're out. All right, straightforward. These flowcharts are great, by the way. Huge shout out. Huge shout out. These are amazing. So you lose, you're out. You win, you're in. So great. Nothing that doesn't change. That didn't change from last week. But you win. Okay. Now T1 versus Talon. If Talon wins, which, I'm assuming T1's not going to pull out all the stops for the last week. I think there's a pretty good chance for Talon. So if Talon wins here, okay, now we have some interesting implications. And Team Secret, the ever-important giant killers, they wake up from their slumber and they open their eyes and they look at the standings and they say, who is the giant of VCT Pacific right now? And they go, oh my gosh, it's RRQ. And they say, well, time to really channel our powers because we have to do it once a season. And they take out RRQ 2-0. There's a chance. Nongshim still has to win 2-0, but I think, we assume that's going to happen. Listen. This isn't anything against RRQ. It's not our fault that RRQ is currently the top seed of Omega. But you have the target on your back, right? You're the one currently painted in red. And the sleeping bull of Team Secret is about to wake up. It's about time. The hibernation has gone a little bit too long. And it's time for the giant killers to return. So I just want everyone to know I am the biggest Team Secret fan this week. Like, Mika's got nothing on me. I am about to go full Filipino on this match. The funnier thing is actually the safer option is just T1 beats Talon, and then Nongshim would finish second or third, which means you start in the upper bracket, which would be great. But, we'll see. Actually, that wouldn't be so bad because, quite frankly, if that happens, Nongshim just seems to historically be pretty strong against the Indonesian teams, Beat RRQ here in stage 1. They beat Boom several times. You know, the Indonesians might be the strongest right now, but Nongshim just seems to be a little bit of the kryptonite. So quite frankly, you know, finishing second or third, then you win your first match, you're probably playing either Boom or RQ. I like those odds as well. So quite frankly, I'm not too worried, but this would be very funny. This would be very funny. Sorry, RQ, but it would be funny. Let's admit it. It would be funny. Okay, let's review. How did week 4 go? Pretty well, actually. So this is what we had at the very beginning of the stage. We had Paper X beating GE. Does that change for me? No. Because as much as I have DFM ranked 12th, I do think DFM just has stronger straight-up fraggers in Akame and Mei and Jian than GE. And also, like, GE, the people we expect to frag aren't even fragging right now. So I'm going to give it to Paper X. Done. T1 versus Talon. Okay, what do I want for Nongshim here? Chat, this week's Pickems is not going to be objective. Do I want Nongshim to potentially be first seed, or do I want Nongshim to just be second or third? No, but then you'd have to play DRX or Gen G. No, so Talon has to win here. And honestly, I did predict this on Plat Chat as well, so I'm going to stick with it. Because I think T1's not going to pull out all the stops, right? They'll probably, like, ban the Icebox, but that's going to be about it. And then Talon, I don't think will go all out either. Although Talon kind of needs to, if I'm not mistaken, right? Sorry for the flashbang. But, Talon could make it in even if they lose, right, if Zeta wins. But Zeta's not going to win, so Talon does kind of need to win anyway if they want a chance to go to Masters. I think this is a bit of a punt, but I don't think it's that crazy. Like, Talon's peaks are very high. I don't think T1's going to peak in this match. And also, yeah, win-loss, 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 win. The pattern stays true. DRX versus Gen G. I'm going to switch this one. At the beginning of the stage, DRX, totally understandable. I do think this is a bit of a 50-50 given the circumstances. But if that is true, I think Munchkin shines in this match. I think this is the match where this is the type of matchup and match where Munchkin's going to love the calling he gets to do. Yeah, it will be a revenge match for Foxy9. That might actually make it worse for Gen G. Foxy9 might get a little bit too crazy, but I think Gen G will be pretty good here. Nongshim versus Zeta. I think this is going to be a banger. Honestly, this day, these two matches, that day is going to blow up, chat. It's going to be so explosive. Like, there's going to be frags everywhere. It's going to be a little bit messy. It's going to be intense. DRX Gen G, the fans are going to go wild. And then Nongshim Zeta is, you win, you get in. Well, for Nongshim, for sure. Zeta, I think, has a couple other chances. But, there's a lot on the line here. But Zeta's looking rejuvenated. Nongshim's back on the neon. Like, it's looking freaking good. This should be a really good match. I think there's a chance this is a 2-1. There is a chance. But also, I think the fast tempo of Zeta, Nongshim doesn't mind it too much. Nongshim just has to watch out not to get too caught up in it. And I think Nongshim really just has to watch out. 10-10 seems to be really smart. I'll be honest, I never really followed his games too closely, like even on T1 Academy. Like, I always knew he was a good fragger. But he seems to have a really good head on his shoulders for in-game IQ. So I think they'll have to watch out for 10-10 more than the other guys. But you do have to watch out here. And also just don't go to B-side if you're on split. DFM versus Boom? Yeah, no questions asked. RRQ versus Secret. It's happening, chat. It's happening. You all laugh. You all say that I'm crazy. But you all said that when I predicted Boom to beat Gen G. Chat, it's time. The sleeping giant killers. The hibernation. The cherry blossoms are out in full bloom. It's warm. It's time to wake up. Team Secret's going to wake up and get that one win they're getting. They're still going to be ranked 11th in my power ratings. This win will not change anything. But they're going to wake up, chat. Objectively speaking, the chances for this match is like pretty much the same as this match. But There is a chance. That's going to be it for this one. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments below who you think is going to move on to the playoffs from each group. And if you have no predictions, just tell me to have a good day, because comments still help the algorithm. That would be much appreciated. And of course, if you're enjoying the content and you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and join us for the live streams, the watch parties, both here on YouTube and on Twitch. You can check it out on either platform. That's going to be it for this. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.